You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. You can follow me on Twitter at Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, on Spotify, on Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Today's episode is brought to you by McDonald's. Proudly serving communities since 1965, McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. I'm loving it. Zhao, you doing back in full effect today. Lily Zhao from Fox 6 joins the show. Before we get to that, I want to talk about two things on the opposite ends of the spectrum. One good thing that has stood out to me through 6 weeks, and one not so good thing. They are two things that I do think showed up on Sunday and have been a big part of the story of the season so far, which is why I want to get to them today. Let's start with the good. Rashan Gary is not putting up big sack numbers, and it's one of the reasons why I thought it was so important that we talk about it, because he is not doing the things that Brian Burns does that creates Twitter buzz. He is not putting up highlight videos where he's ghosting a tackle and getting a sack. But on balance, he has been the much more impactful, versatile, and overall quality defender this season. And there are going to be questions about, okay, well, it took until year 3, and what did he do last year? And what did he do the year before? And this pick could have been X, it could have been Y, it could have been Z. The best pick they could have made in that spot was DK Metcalf. They didn't do that. The rest of the NFL didn't do that for 30 picks after that, more. So let's not dwell on that part of it. In fact, I think the pick is being overlooked in terms of everyone made their decision that he was a bust. And he didn't play as a rookie that much, and he played a little bit more last year. Well, he's getting to start this year. And again, the sack numbers aren't there. But among edge defenders with at least 100 snaps, Rashan Gary is 13th in Pro Football Focus grade. 13th. That's really good. That means he is like a red chip edge right now today. Not a blue chip, not the elite guy, but he is consistently impacting game. 10th in pressures, hasn't missed a tackle all season. And when you look at his numbers, they're extremely similar this season to Jadeveon Clowney. And I bring up that name for this reason. Both were freak athletes. All-time, Rashan Gary, all-time athlete. In terms of his testing numbers, he's in the 100th percentile of a couple of these speed score, agility score, these kinds of things where you mix size and speed. Guys 6'5", 275 should not be able to move the way that he does. But there's some stiffness in his hips. He doesn't have a super advanced pass rush plan at this point. His best idea is speed to power, initial quickness, be a terrific run defender, give good effort, and win with quickness and effort that way. And Jadeveon Clowney in his career, he's been a solid pass rusher. He's always been a guy who got more pressures than sacks, just like Rashan Gary right now. And he's always been a phenomenal run defender. He's a consistently impactful run defender. Now, he does it more as a penetrator. Rashan Gary does it more as a point of attack defender. But if you think about it from that standpoint, if Rashan Gary is healthy Jadeveon Clowney over the course of his career, that's going to be a really, really good player. And what's more, he's still so young. I mean, he's still not even 25 years old. So there's still so much upside. They love what he brings to this defense, the effort, and this shows up. I mean, he was really, really good against the Bears. And it's not, the sack numbers, again, they don't tell the story. They just don't. And that is often the case. And I had this whole fight with Bears fans leading up to the game about this, about what matters and what doesn't when it comes to pass rush and, pressures versus sacks and all of those things. And it's important to understand when you convert sacks at a certain rate, a rate that is above average, given the pressure numbers, that stuff is just probably not going to be sustainable. That's just the reality that any defense faces. Now, the Bears fans don't really understand regression or anything like that, but Rashan Gary, according to Pro Football Focus, had 7 pressures against the Bears, led the team in pressures, had 6 hurries, and 1 quarterback hit, no sacks, but 7 pressures. Kenny Clark had 6 pressures and 2 sacks with 4 QB hurries. He got the sacks, but Rashan Gary consistently impacted Justin Fields' platform. And in fact, on more than one occasion, Rashan Gary's rush forced Justin Fields to move off his spot and go somewhere else. And in the case of Jonathan Garvin, his sack was a direct result of a Rashan Gary bull rush that made Justin Fields break the pocket and roll to his left, and Garvin chased him down. He's impacting the game, and that's what you need. Okay, now on the other side of this, the bad. This is via our friend Jake Morley at Packer Report. Aaron Rodgers, deep passing. This is on throws 20-plus yards down the field. He has the 5th most attempts in the league, but the 19th most completions. His completion percentage, the percentage of 20-plus yard attempts that have been deemed catchable, 31st in the league, 30%. His deep passer rating, 48.5. That's 31st. He has not thrown a touchdown on a throw over 20 yards, but he has 2 picks on throws over 20 yards. Now, those numbers are not going to sustain, but they are problematic. And we talked about it last night with Ross. This is a quarterback who is having opportunities to hit these plays down the field. He had Allen Lazard on a go route where the safety is not in a position to make a play. Could have been a touchdown, could have been a 40-yard, 50-yard, 60-yard play. Rodgers misses him in the only place he can't miss, outside. Now, generally speaking, on those balls, you want to throw it away from the safety, but Allen Lazard is over his inside shoulder with room to the middle of the field. Can't miss it there. There have been throws where Devontae Adams has got open down the sideline and Rodgers has overshot him. It's not MVS is gone and he can run under most of these throws and he makes Rodgers better on these deep throws. That is a thing where you have a bigger margin for error, and it could be a case where Aaron Rodgers is trying to be perfect and trying to make sure he's putting enough air under them. He has underthrown MVS a couple times, and so maybe he's like, man, I got to get these balls out there. It just hasn't been the same sort of efficiency from him. And the only thing I can think of really that would be causing some of this is his being uncomfortable in the pocket. On the play that Ross and I talked about, and the play that I just mentioned, the Allen Lazard play, Elgton Jenkins got pushed a little bit into the backfield, but he's to Aaron Rodgers' left. Rodgers fades to his left into that defender. So it is hard for me to go, well, he's unsure of his footing because of the blocking. Well, that's your best offensive lineman in the game, and you faded into the pressure rather than away from it and didn't get your feet set and stepped in the bucket. Rodgers, I try not to worry about the footwork with Rodgers because he can make these throws from crazy platforms with both feet off the ground. I mean, that's fine. Whatever. He's gonna look different than other quarterbacks. But That's an unforced error. That's not about the pocket collapsing around you. It's just a miss. And they might find the rhythm, and you might get David Bakhtiari back, and you slide Elton Jenkins inside, and everyone feels really good about it. And they get the run game really going. They get the heavy play action game going. They're able to get these guys running just butt naked down the field, no safety in the middle, and you've got someone you can just lay it out there. I mean, those are the plays that they had last year. I mean, guys running just wide ass open. That hasn't been happening so far this year. In fact, they've been a bottom 5 team in terms of wide open receivers this year. They were first in the league last year. The offense has not schemed up guys open as consistently this year as it did last year. So part of this is also on Matt LaFleur. He has to take some responsibility here too. I appreciated yesterday, or 2 days ago, excuse me, when Matt LaFleur said, it gave an explanation for the amount of empty that they were playing. I think they're going to trust their 5-man protection once David Bakhtiari gets back, whether or not that's this week or next week or the week after. We don't know yet. But my guess is that will lead to a return to form in a lot of ways of identity. They're using empty 5% more than they did, or 5% more of the time. It used to be about 9%. Last year was about 9% of their snaps were in empty. This year, it's almost 15% in empty. That's a big increase, relatively speaking. So I think you'll see that fall. Their success using heavy personnel, I think, supports that. That was the case last year, and we'll see. I mean, we're in wait and see mode with this offense and defense. We're waiting for guys to get healthy to see what this team truly is. All right, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Get Upside. This is especially important right now because the price of gas, it's crazy. It's crazy. And my listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in the App Store. Use promo code Touchdown to get a bonus 25 cent per gallon fill up on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back per gallon. Don't pay full price at the pump anymore. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app for free and use promo code Touchdown to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. Some people who drive a lot are making as much as $200 or $300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch. The cash back gets added right to your account, and you can cash out anytime. PayPal, e-gift card, Amazon, bank account, whatever you want. Just download the free Get Upside app and use the promo code Touchdown. Joining me now, as she does every week, now on a 5-game win streak from Fox 6 in Milwaukee, Lily Zhao. Lily, the Packers beat the Bears. Aaron Rodgers still owns Chicago. And so I ask you, how you doing?
Peter, great to be back on another victorious week for the Green Bay Packers. It's always fun to talk football when your team's on the up and up, right? So it was fun to be there in Chicago to witness them win in person, a good solid win. So doing great. How you doing?
I'm excellent. And I guess I have to know right off the bat, did you see any birds being flipped from your vantage point in the stadium?
I will say, sadly, from where our press box is to where he scored, it would have taken binoculars to see the birds. But based off of what we saw post-game, plenty of birds were flipped in Chicago.
Turns out there were plenty of birds. And so look, this is one of those iconic moments instantly. And I think social media helps, these things really, really light on fire. But this is something that we talked about, Jason and I did on Monday in our newsletter for The Leap. Like, where does this rank in Packers Bears all-time lore? And I was like, I don't know, where does it rank all-time for Rodgers himself? Because he's had these iconic quote moments. I don't know. Do you have any initial takes on that?
Ooh, it's 100%. If we're just talking about the "I still own you" comment, I'm
right.
Like, that's probably like top 2 with "relax," I would think. Like the "run the table" comment was good, but it wasn't like, I guess, to the fans or anything. It was more so like, we're gonna go run the table. So I'd say probably top 2 with the "relax" comment there, I'd say.
Run the table is better in retrospect, right? Because they ran the table. So it's like, okay, that is a marker of the moment, But in the moment, it was just sort of like, yeah, Aaron, like they had just gotten their butts kicked by Washington. Like it didn't send chills down your spine the way that I Still Own You did. I mean, that's pretty outstanding. Something that I think is getting lost, and I want your read on this. Rodgers said post game that he had thought a lot this week about this being potentially his last game at Soldier Field. And you tweeted that out, and I quote tweeted like, "Oh God, we're gonna do this every week at every venue." Like, "Oh, this could be the last time you're at Arrowhead," and it's just sort of like, "Well, he's been to Arrowhead like twice. Relax." But this is gonna happen. What if anything did you make of his answer? Because he said, "I've thought a lot about this week, but I don't think it's going to be my last one."
I feel like every time Aaron Rodgers says something, it's not like he's not saying it flippantly, or I shouldn't say flippant. Like he's not saying it without intent. The man is so smart. He's so cerebral. He's saying things because he means it. So when he's saying something like that, it's kind of like it turns your wheels a little bit. Like, have there been conversations about the future? You know, it's still very early on in the season, but have there been those behind the scenes talks with the Packers brass about the future of Aaron Rodgers? Because, you know, looking at the numbers and everything, it's a big, huge question mark as to if he can even be back next year with how the money situation is with his team. So
right.
With him saying it, it's kind of like, ooh, haven't had a conversation. We don't know. Maybe it's just him saying it, you know, wishfully thinking that, oh, I'll be back and this won't be my last rivalry game in Chicago. But I don't know. It's, you know, Aaron Rodgers says things with intent. And so it definitely got my ears perked up when you said that, though, for sure.
The tone was so different. I mean, you came on right after Rodgers came back, or we found out he was coming back, right? And so once he started speaking, it was, well, we'll see. I mean, he was asked, do you want to be here next year? All that stuff. And it was always, I'm focused on the now. I'm focused on right now. I want to talk about now. Like, we'll figure out later. At least that I can recall, this is the first that I remember him going, no, there is this future part, and I've thought about it, and this is something that I think is going to happen. I mean, that seems like a real thing, and I don't know that it's gotten the kind of play that maybe you or I think that it deserves.
And I guarantee if he hadn't have said the "I still own you" comment, maybe it probably would have been talked about in a bigger light, because that just took over the airwaves, and rightfully so. But
isn't that part of this though, Lily? Like, my thought after that is he just loves to beat the Bears, and he loves to stick it to these teams. Like, how do you, if you're have these hesitations and reservations about staying with this club, you go into a game like that, and everyone in that end zone, we saw the photos, everyone in that end zone is flipping off Aaron Rodgers, and he's screaming at them. And it's just sort of like, if you're Rodgers, how do you walk away from that? Like, this is why you play.
Exactly. And maybe just in that moment when he's saying that, because he did say, you know, I blacked out. You know, there's certain moments where you do black out. Maybe just during that moment, he's thinking, I can't give this up. You know, I want to stay. I want to play another how many years against this team. And no, granted, it's going to be at Lambeau later in the year, but, you know, there's just a different feel when you beat the Bears in Chicago in their home turf. So maybe in that moment, he was thinking, oh, like this, maybe these feelings of winning these rivalry games and beating these fans that love to hate him is something that could keep him. But, you know, maybe that was just wishful thinking. Maybe it was an indication that they have had talks with him about his future. We don't know. But it definitely makes for good talking points for us, for sure.
It sure does. I'm all about the content for us. In terms of this game, though, the Packers come out slow again, and they have been down in the first quarter, I believe, in 5 of their 6 games so far this year. This is reminding me a little of 2019 when they were coming out slow, 2018 especially. And last year they were so good coming out and starting fast. What do you think they're missing? What's going on?
That's a good question. And I was thinking back to 2019 as well, because it seemed like every game it was, you know, first, you know, they were behind a 6, they couldn't score, then they had to come back and win. And then last year it was just they came out guns blazing from week 1, and then they were just able to score in every consecutive opening drive, which we haven't really seen in a long time in this season. So I don't know. It's like they have those scripted plays for that opening drive, but it's not like they're producing. So I don't know if those defenses are just figuring out what those scripted plays are, and they're just, you know, figuring them out. But when you're looking at kind of what they've done, it's, there's the key guys, Devontae, Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon. It's not really many other key contributors in that aspect. And I know we talked about it last week. It was like Allen Lazard, Robert Tonyan, even Marcedes Lewis. It's how do you get those guys involved? Even Randall Cobb. Because these opening drives haven't really been that inspiring, or they've gotten just to midfield and have just stalled. It's, two missed throws, whatever. But I will say, Aaron Rodgers is still a phenomenal quarterback, but there are just a couple of those throws where you're like, oh, he would have made that. He should have made that. And that probably would have been the difference in a couple of these opening drives.
For sure. There have been a couple deep balls, especially his deep passing, and Jake Morley from Packer Report tweeted out he's been tweeting out the stats all year that the deep passing especially has just not been there for Rodgers so far. I want to talk about Quadzilla. I want to talk about AJ Dillon because Matt LaFleur said last week and the week before, we need to find more ways to get him involved. We need to find ways to get him touches. Now he's breaking off these chunk runs the last 2 weeks. He's had explosive plays. Is this the version of AJ Dillon you expected? Has he exceeded your expectations? What are your impressions of him so far?
I think the last couple of times I was able to talk with Aaron Jones, it's, he's always told me that the sky is the limit for AJ Dillon. So while this is encouraging from what we have seen so far from him, I don't think this is the best he can be. It's still early on in his career. It's still early on in the season. I think there's still a lot more we can see from him, especially the passing game. He's really kind of broken out there, and it's really been fun to watch these tailbacks get involved in the passing game because that just makes everything more dynamic. But to get him involved and just to spell Aaron Jones has been really invaluable because I think when you're looking at this offense, I feel like sometimes 3rd and 1 or even 2nd and 1, 4th and 1, you're kind of like, they're gonna pass on a slant, right? But now it's like they can go up and down the field and get that 1 yard with a guy like AJ Dillon. So I think that this is still the beginning of his career. I think he's going to be much better as the season progresses. But with what he's done so far in 6 weeks of work has been really encouraging.
What defensively? How much can we take away from this game? Because Justin Fields, I believe he's gone over 200 yards passing one time this season, and it was 209 yards in that game. The run defense is still a problem. Where are you with where you think this defense is right now? Because they're really banged up. They have a different ceiling if everyone is healthy, but where are they right now?
They're playing good football. The red zone defense is a whole other thing we could talk about. That's not good football. But when you're talking about, in between the 20s, I mean, they're playing pretty solid football. Granted, the Chicago Bears don't have a very potent offense, so it's hard to kind of gauge where this team is at when you're, defending a rookie quarterback and doesn't really have a lot of weapons, yada, yada, yada. So I think the really big challenge will come Thursday night against the Cardinals, and then the following Sunday against the Chiefs. Is how do they perform there against two really good quarterbacks with two really good offenses? That's going to be a really good gauging point. But granted, you don't know who's going to come back defensively at that point as well. But I think for now, they're doing their jobs. They're doing enough to help this offense. And that's encouraging to see. Like, they're not losing games. In the past, we talked about, it's up to the Packers defense. Yikes. But now they're not losing games. They're doing their jobs, but they're going to have two tough tests the next 3 weeks.
We had Ross Uglem on yesterday from Packer Report, and he was talking about Devondre Campbell and what he brought to this team. It seems like there has been, for whatever reason, and maybe it is just coincidental, but it seems like this team is playing much more disciplined, and maybe it's Joe Barry, but Devondre Campbell, to me, seems like he's the guy that he's not erasing mistakes, but he's making sure guys are lined up correctly, and he's playing his butt off. Do we need to be talking about this guy as a Pro Bowl player? Like, what is going on with him? Because this is better than we've ever seen him play anywhere else.
Exactly. And I feel like he deserves a lot of credit. And while he's not doing anything, flashy every single week. It's the stuff he does, to get those guys set up, tell them what the checks are. That's the invaluable stuff that you need in a leader on the defense to make sure everybody is set and they know what their assignments are. Because if you're looking on to the sideline trying to figure things out with 5 seconds left on the clock, it's kind of like, well, this is not what we want. This is not disciplined defense.
Right.
We have a guy like Devondre.
We did see that early in the year too, where guys were like trying to get lined up, and it was like who's where, and it became like a fire drill.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's kind of the last couple of weeks we've seen things kind of calm down. He's been able to get everybody in line, and that's what we want to see. And I think it's going to be really encouraging to have him in the middle of this kind of leading the charge per se once, hopefully Zadarius comes back way down the line. But, Preston was injured. Those guys in the back end are really banged up. So having him in like a steady force is what this defense needs.
Kenny Clark came through on that last drive in a big way. 2 sacks, chasing down Justin Fields. And I mentioned this on Twitter. I mean, the guy is 300 plus. I don't know how many pounds over 300, but he's over 300. And yet in the fourth quarter, he's chasing down 4-4 Justin Fields and getting these sacks in crucial moments. Is this the best you've seen Kenny Clark play since he's been in Green Bay? Because you've been in Green Bay, I think, for his whole career, haven't you?
Yeah, I really have. It's certainly for sure the best I've seen him play. There's another level I think he can still get to. Another injury last year really hampered him, but I think with how he is playing this year, it's just indicative of what kind of guy he can be in the future for this team and be a Pro Bowler and all that stuff. Because even we heard Matt LaFleur say he felt like he was going to throw up when he saw Kenny Clark go down. Because if Kenny goes down, I mean, who knows what we can see on the defensive line? Like, he's really the lifeline of that line. To see him play his butt off in the fourth quarter and kind of seal this win for this team is, I think, what we expect from him and what he expects from himself.
Well, the Packers have Washington this weekend. I didn't want to spend a lot of time on it, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. But is there, they're coming off a rivalry game. What is your concern level that there could be a letdown here, especially with this huge stretch coming up? You mentioned at Arizona on a Thursday night and then at Kansas City the following week.
It's certainly players hate the 2 words trap game, but it could potentially be a trap game. I was talking to Oren Burks the day before, and, he said he really likes Taylor Heineke, likes the athleticism, likes how, he gets his guys in check and how their offense is rolling as well. So they're going to present a big challenge, but it's, again, a team you should theoretically beat at home. But then again, it's, even that first quarter against the Bears, it was really lethargic. There was really no energy. So if that's kind of what this team comes out with on Sunday, who knows? They could be in another hole. So you don't want this to be the quote-unquote trap game for the Packers, considering the 2 big games they have coming up. But I like this team's chances against the Washington football team, especially with everything going on with their upper echelon of folks.
What a disaster they are. I can't believe you pass on an opportunity to use juice. Anyone playing the drinking game is so disappointed that they did not get to take a shot there. But Lily, this is great. I'm thinking 6 in a row is a pretty good possibility for next week. And I can't wait.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. I want to thank Lily Zhao for joining the program. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Packers your first listen of the day. This episode of Locked On Packers is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving community since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. It's a place where friends and families come to reconnect. A place where classmates can meet up for a study group, knowing they'll have dependable Wi-Fi and the endless supplies of French fries and McFlurries. Win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, and the home team or away team can come to recharge. It's a place you always look forward to stopping to on a long road trip to rest your legs and refuel. Chocolate milkshake, French fries, maybe some chicken nuggies if you're feeling it. It's hard to beat. It really is hard to beat. It's like a warm blanket meal for me. It really is. So head to your local McDonald's and refuel and reconnect. Did somebody say Locked On Packers watch party? I'm loving it. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. If you haven't had a Built Bar by now, you are missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. I have tried all the other protein bars. Trust me, you have to try these amazing bars for yourself. Most protein bars are chalky or waxy or impossible to swallow because it's so dense and blah. Built Bar is soft, covered in 100% real chocolate. And when you bite into it, you know you're eating something that's different. It's more of an experience, one that you'll enjoy. In fact, you'd swear you're eating a candy bar. And yet, Built Bar low in carb, low in calories, low fat, low sugar, high in protein. So all the healthy benefits on top of something being delicious. This month, Built Bar is coming out with new limited time flavors every 3 to 4 days. So check the website often. You don't want to miss out. Go to built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, we're going to be back tomorrow. Crossover Thursday. I called it Opponent Thursday yesterday. That is a relic of seasons past. I used to call it Opponent Wednesday when it was on Wednesday. Crossover Thursday is what we're doing tomorrow. Live stream on Friday, live stream after the game on Sunday. Go subscribe to Locked On Packers on YouTube. And if you're watching us on YouTube, right down below, hit subscribe. Tell a friend, share it. Hey, have you seen this? This is fun. You should watch this too. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to hit us up on the Locked On Packers fan hotline, you can do that, 920-341-3775 to stay Locked On Packers. Subscribe to The Leap.